Welcome back to Illinois Law. I have with me Tom Bruno and Sheila Murphy. Tom, before break we were talking about the sealing process, and now let's move to the employment process. When an individual has had an arrest but not a conviction, and they apply for a job, and the application asks if they've ever been convicted of a crime, can employers ask under Illinois law if they've ever been arrested?
No, that's an improper question. But you have to know, in the real world, employers discriminate against potential employees for many off-limits reasons,
Right.
and they don't own up to it.
Right.
So it is a problem to have an arrest record out there, even though I can assure you it's improper to ask about it. It's a danger to have it out there because some employers will improperly learn about it and hold it against you. They might look up on a court file and see that you were charged with an offense, but you were found not guilty by the jury. Well, we as lawyers know that should be no bad inference. You
Right.
had a trial and the jury found you not guilty. But in the real world, a real employer might say, well, I'm not hiring this guy. I'm going to hire this person who wasn't charged with a crime.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
So people have an interest in cleaning up the record of the fact that they were ever accused, even if they were found not guilty, even if the prosecutor decided to dismiss the case. They want to scrub clean the bad inference that comes from having been accused.
And a way to do that would be through the expungement process.
That's exactly what expungement's about. You get arrested for shoplifting, you convince the prosecutor that you're not guilty, and they dismiss the case. You'd like to go back and have the police department tear up your mugshots, destroy your fingerprints. You'd like to have the circuit clerk get rid of the file. You do that through the expungement process.
Now, what about a common scenario well, I don't know if it's common, but for a younger person? Say there's not a mugshot, there's not fingerprints, but there's a ticket that references the statute. Perhaps they were drinking in the park, which is prohibited, and it's dismissed. How is that an offense if there's not a mugshot and there's not fingerprints? Is that something that you would want expunged if it was dismissed and it is a lower offense?
I think it's expungible. I don't know that I would bother doing it.
Okay.
It may be, you know, I would say to a college student, look, you got a drinking ticket that didn't even result in a conviction, the case was dismissed. You're not going to run into serious problems with a potential employer if you say, when I was in college, I had this, they're not supposed to ask about it anyway. But in theory, yes, that is the kind of thing you could have expunged. You could make that municipal police department tear up those records, destroy, they actually send you back your mugshots.
Okay, thank you. Now, Judge Murphy, in your experience with the expungement process, were most individuals represented by attorneys, or did they try to do that themselves?
No, it was unusual to have anyone represented by an attorney, but many times people would like in the case I gave you, of the domestic violence cases, the victim would be notified. And so it was interesting that sometimes victims would come to court, they would protest perhaps or go along with the expungement, but then they'd say, you know, when I was married to him or when I was with him, he wouldn't give me any money. So when it was time to get the children ready for school, I was charged with shoplifting. I was taking socks, I was taking pencils, I was taking tablets.
Some very painful
situations.
situations.
Is it possible for me to get that expunged? And then, so it was a learning process so of course it's possible. And often the victims and the defendants switch roles sometimes. In other words, especially in that case.
It's an area of the law that lends itself to people doing it by themselves without an attorney. It's generally not adversarial. It's a lot of paperwork. It's like preparing your income taxes.
Where do they find the forms, though?
Well,
How do they
there's
know
great
how to
resources on the internet. The state of Illinois, you drill down to the Office of the State Appellate Defender. They have a link there for expungement. And they have a great how-to manual and forms. And Cook County has its own set of forms that they're recommended to use in Cook County because they then are familiar to the Cook County judges.
Say someone doesn't have internet access, but they went to the courthouse and said, I'd like to find out. They may not even know the word expunged. They may not know the right word to call it. But I was arrested. I'd like my record cleared. I would like no record of that.
In Cook County, the clerk's office has, Aurelia Puchinsky was there when I was a judge. Now she's going to the appellate court. But she made sure that in every single office someone would be able to interpret exactly what you mean if you said, I want my record cleared. You didn't have to use the word expungement.
Okay.
And really, I was in Wasaka, Illinois recently, and the people down there were so nice.
Yeah.
And most clerk's offices
Would know
throughout
what
the
that
state
means.
understand, and they have some, I bet that's true in Urbana, isn't it?
How would it
Not
be?
so much, but
That's
that's
If someone, say I came in and asked about, theoretically, that there was an arrest and I would like to have my record cleared, how would the clerk handle that in Champaign County?
well, I think in Champaign County, frankly, they wouldn't be very helpful. I think that you find great differences from county to county.
They don't have forms
I can
available.
say that comfortably because I don't think they're going to see much of the show.
Okay, all right.
But different clerks' offices have different degrees of being helpful to the public.
Are the forms there, though, if they chose to be helpful?
I think many counties downstate, you wouldn't be able to go get paper forms from the clerk.
That's unfortunate
You
for
wouldn't,
the citizens
there wouldn't
of
be
those
forms.
counties.
You can download them, like I said, from state websites, but I don't think that, I'm sure in our county there aren't forms you can pick up. There are
But
not.
there are here. You can go to each place.
But it's the kind of thing where I might advise a person who calls that it would be really costly for me to do all this paperwork for them, and they can do it themselves.
But if they made that call to yourself or to another attorney, you would point them in the direction of where to get the forms
Sure, and if they insist that
without representing them.
if they've got deep pockets and they want to make their life easy, I'll do it for them. But it's expensive. It's like having, like I said, like having your income taxes prepared by a professional.
Okay.
You don't have to do it that way, but it's certainly nice and convenient.
Okay.
But it's expensive.
Yes.
And so I tell people, you might want to just do this yourself. You're going to be filling out forms and sending them in and waiting and following up on it. And people are often receptive to that.
And you may actually, I would think sometimes you might advise someone don't try, because I had a number of physicians who came before me to have their records expunged.
Well, that would be an issue for them, not from a licensure perspective and from the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, at least in Illinois, that oversees their licensure, or
Right.
even not just their licensing status, but their application for medical staff privileges and medical staff membership at hospitals. Just without a conviction, although there might not be an employment arrangement, it might be frowned upon, like that they had an arrest, to be a member of that hospital.
Well, but see, the other side of the coin is that as a judge, you have discretion as to whether or not to grant it. And how do you determine whether you should grant the expungement? So,
and all you're relying on is the person, usually it's the individual.
Right. So in those cases, if there was any sexual offense alleged, then the victims had to be notified. And so I would let them know, let the petitioners know that out in front. The first day they came, I'd say, this, the victims will be so sometimes they would withdraw the petition. They wouldn't pursue it. Other times they came and there would be a hearing, and then I would determine, and the judicial determination has to be on the offense. In other words, if, say, someone is accused of domestic violence and retail theft, and after hearing, I hear from the victim that there was a continuation of the violence and so forth, well, then I would be justified in not expunging the domestic violence. But if he was also charged with retail theft, and there was no one, no shoplifter,
Kmart doesn't show up to
No,
tell you.
right.
Right.
Then I had no jurisdiction to say you can't have this expunged, so.
So you would give leniency in
That's
that
right.
area.
Yeah.
Many of these inquiries come from people who aren't eligible for expungement. And the lawyer's role is to explain to them, you can't expunge a conviction. And I get calls all the time from people who were convicted, who would like to get rid of that off their record. And there's no practical way to get rid of the record of a real conviction. You can appeal to the governor for a pardon that's so unrealistic that it's not worth pursuing for most people. But if you have a conviction, if you actually pled guilty and were convicted, you didn't get a sentence of court supervision, you got conditional discharge or probation or jail or a fine, those are convictions and they never go off your record. And expungement has nothing to do with that.
But
How
if
would
it-
an individual address that, though, if they had a conviction? Expungement's not an option, and it wasn't a serious offense. It was, say, a misdemeanor payable by fine, no court
I
supervision,
counsel
first
them
offense,
to work on how they're going to explain that to the potential employer.
because that's who's going to look at
To
it.
really come up with an articulable reason of, here's why I'm still your best employee.
Thank you so much, Tom and Judge Murphy. I've
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it.
Sure.
And goodbye, viewers. Thank you so much.